Australia is not a new land, and this fact is powerful enough to shatter any preconceived notions about history. Before European sails crossed the horizon, before the name Southern Continent appeared on ancient maps, a civilization existed here older than almost any known humankind. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Aboriginal people lived, breathed, and were one with this land. For them, Australia was not territory to be conquered, but a living entity. Mountains with memories, rivers with souls, the night sky, the whispers of their ancestors. Dreamtime stories don't tell of a distant past, but of an eternal present where time never breaks. And today, for the first time, AI Reconstruction allows us to look directly at that truth. Not through vague narratives, but through images so vivid and real, as if history is opening its eyes to us. This is not just a video. This is the moment you realize humanity has forgotten more than it ever knew. If you're ready to step into this buried part of history, hit like and subscribe now, so AI can continue to awaken ancient memories the world has tried to forget. For tens of thousands of years, indigenous communities have built incredibly sophisticated social systems, beliefs, and knowledge of nature. Things began to change in the 17th and 18th centuries, as European explorers gradually approached the land. Initially, there were sporadic voyages by the Dutch, leaving the name New Holland on the map, but without permanent settlement. Australia remained a remote, mysterious land, outside the centers of power of the Western world. However, this isolation did not last forever. In 1770, Captain James Cook landed on the east coast and declared the land to belong to the British Empire. Just a few years later, in 1788, the first fleet docked at Botany Bay, opening a completely new chapter in Australian history. Unlike many other colonies, Australia was initially built as a massive exile camp. Thousands of prisoners were brought from England to a strange, harsh land with a completely different climate and nature. Australia gradually developed its own identity. From a distant British colony, the individual colonies began to discuss self-governance, laws, and a shared future. While still under the control of the British Empire, Australia was no longer just a forgotten place on the edge of the world. The early years of the colony were far from a glorious beginning, but rather a harsh struggle for survival. European settlers arrived on this unfamiliar land with little food, almost no proper farming experience, and complete ignorance of the local climate, soil, and ecosystem. Crop failures, widespread disease, hunger, and despair became part of daily life, enough to make them realize this was no paradise. While the Europeans struggled to survive, their presence shook an order that had existed for millennia. Aboriginal communities who had lived in harmony with the land for generations began to lose access to hunting grounds, water sources, and sacred spaces. Land was seized, resources dwindled, and ancient rules binding humans to nature were broken. These clashes led to intense conflicts and violence, leaving deep and indelible wounds in Australian history. Everything changed when the gold rush in colonial Australia erupted in the mid-19th century, particularly from 1851 onwards, and quickly altered the fate of the continent. When gold was discovered in New South Wales and Victoria, news spread like wildfire. Hundreds of thousands of people from Europe, China, and America flocked to Australia with a shared dream: to strike it rich overnight. Wastelands quickly transformed into bustling, chaotic, yet hopeful gold mining camps. The gold rush brought unprecedented wealth to the colony, fueling the economy, trade, and urbanization. Melbourne, once a small town, rose to become one of the wealthiest cities in the world at the time. However, behind the glittering gold lay a harsh, dark side: poor living conditions, disease, violent conflict, and discrimination against immigrants. For Aboriginal communities, the gold rush accelerated land loss, livelihood erosion, and conflict, deepening historical wounds. The gold rush not only brought gold to Australia, reshaping society and laying the foundation for a modern nation. In 1901, a decisive turning point occurred in the continent's history. The Commonwealth of Australia was officially established. 6 previously separate colonies, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania, merged into a single nation, ushering in the era of modern Australia. This event offered hope for political stability, economic development, and a shared national identity. However, behind this historic milestone lay deep, unresolved conflicts. From the early years of its founding, the White Australia policy was implemented, aimed at restricting immigration from non-European regions and reinforcing the image of a white nation. Meanwhile, the Aboriginal people, the continent's first inhabitants, continued to be disenfranchised, deprived of land, and excluded from political and social life. Following World War II, Australia entered a period of economic boom and massive immigration. Millions of people from Europe, then Asia and the Middle East, settled there, bringing with them a diversity of languages, cultures, and religions. The White Australia policy gradually faded, paving the way for a modern, multicultural society. Cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane grew rapidly, becoming important economic and cultural centers of the region. However, along with prosperity, Australia began to confront its past more seriously, particularly the long-standing injustices against Aboriginal people. Issues of land rights, recognition, and reconciliation became central themes in social life. Today, Australia is a modern and democratic nation. But beneath its developed exterior lie layers of history. From the ancient Dreamtime, the harsh colonial period, to a multicultural nation of the 21st century.